Hello, human peoples. You're listening to the podcast network of Gamefully Unemployed. To support us and gain access to great exclusive podcasts like Fox Mulder is a Maniac, Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, Star Trek The Next Futurama, and our latest show, Spiel Boys, head over to patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. We do game streaming, movie nights with our patrons every Friday night, and you can even commission your own podcast about anything you want. Literally anything, within reason, and we have to do it. You are quite frankly out of excuses not to go visit patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. That's patreon.com/GAMEFULLY unemployed, which is spelled like it sounds.
Oh no, it's podcast time.
Get your podcast hats on, everybody.
When I began that sentence, I did not know how I was going to end it.
Same here.
Yeah.
We're not good at our jobs.
We're fine. We're fine. Listen, we're white guys who like to talk. We're great at our jobs.
Well, it's just our absolute love of movies that keeps us going forward. When I wake up in the mornings, I sit at the edge of my bed and I stare into the middle distance of my wall for about 25 seconds in silence, unblinking. And then I say movies.
Movies. I have that.
And then I'm up
movies
and at 'em.
hat. Yeah. Hi, everybody.
Hey.
My name is David Bell.
I'm Abe Epperson.
And we just watched The Substance.
Ooh, yeah.
Movies.
Movies.
Have you ever dreamt of a better version of yourself? Younger, more beautiful, more perfect.
As an aside, Abe,
Yeah.
this week's Hypecast, I talk about a movie that deserves more hype called I Like Movies. And it's about a Canadian, a kid in Canada who's a teenager who wants to go to NYU in
Oh, yeah, no, I know
2003.
this. Yeah.
Have you seen it? Because
I
it was
saw the poster or something.
okay,
press
the
online.
trailer is like a direct attack on us. There's literally a scene where he
love
walks
it.
into the movie theater and he goes, "One ticket to Paul Thomas Anderson's Punch Drunk Love, please."
Yeah.
And then that just killed me where I was like, fuck.
Barton Fink. Barton Fink.
Anyway, we're not here to talk about that. But first, Abe, thank you so much for being on. Do you want to, at the beginning of this, just tell us where people can find you, all that good stuff?
Yeah, let's make it quick. Patreon.com/smallbeans if you like what I'm dropping.
I want to say that you guys are doing a Halloween D&D stream, and I point that out because I'm in it.
Yeah,
and I just
you
feel
guys.
so blessed to be part of it. It's so much fun.
It's funny as hell.
And it's a lot of fun. Yeah.
I edited it because there's also a video component, so you can watch it on YouTube or you can watch it, to wherever you find podcasts on Small Beans Network. But editing it together was like an absolute dream.
Nice.
Mike is basically doing a DM for us. A little sandbox for us to be little goblins.
Little shits, yeah.
Little assholes who are just
great.
trying to... It really feels more like any other D&D thing that I've ever done. That it's like... It's the DM versus the players more than ever.
It's so good.
I
mean, that's how I think of D&D.
That is how I think DM...
Yeah.
That's how you should think of it, but it's like... It's just it's series of, like, if you were a DM, Michael Swain would just be, God damn it. Damn it. But he's so good at navigating it and finding a joke that he's just light on his feet. So it works to me.
It works. It's a lot of fun. Everybody check it out. I just want to talk about D&D, but we're here to talk about a movie called The Substance. I went and saw this. I rushed out and saw it in theaters, and it was like a big ado in my day. Like it kind of like got in the way of my day, and I came home to immediately find it on streaming. So that's all to say. This is on streaming if people want to watch it.
It's a movie thing.
Yeah. It is everybody's been talking about it. It's got Demi Moore. It's got Denis Quaid. It's got Margaret Qualley. It's a body horror movie about age dysmorphia, I want to say. It's about an older actress who her star is fading, quite literally, who finds this black market drug called The Substance that creates basically it's and I don't mean to dismiss it by saying this, it's Picture of Dorian Gray meets Death Becomes Her, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
She creates a younger version of herself that she has to swap bodies with every 7 days. And what you start seeing is this duality where like her younger self starts resenting her older self and vice versa. And they start to very quickly, her younger self wants more days. And we learn that as you take more days, because the procedure involves spinal fluid and like you only have 7 days worth at a time, but she starts stealing more days and it takes away from her older self who slowly decays and grows to resent her. There's also a sort of parent child relationship.
A little bit of that. Madonna and Crone kind of old school, you know?
Yeah, where she's like resenting her of like cleaning up after her. And it's like, you're taking everything from me.
Right.
What did you think of? Oh, and the director is the director of Revenge.
Coralie Farja, yeah.
Coralie Farja. I haven't seen Revenge yet, but I've heard good things. What did you think of The Substance?
I enjoyed it. What's not to love? Like the Cronenbergs, the vibe, the execution, the visuals. There's a lot. Like I just love the era we're in terms of like, to use the eye-rolly term, like elevated horror. This isn't that. This is like a straight up Cronenberg fest.
I love that body horror feels like it's back.
I love that horror's getting like doing the simplistic satire of horror that often comes in, you know, like kind of like this Jordan Peele kind of like, it's right there in the room. The monster's right there. Look at it. I love that type of filmmaking. And what a stellar cast, performances all around, fucking killer. Like I had a great time. I had a lovely time. Me too.
I really liked this movie. My only note, and this is really a matter of opinion, is I thought it was a little too long. I think like there was a point where I was like, yeah, I got it. Like I feel like it kind of had too many beats at the end.
Right.
But other than that, and like honestly, who cares? Like I still really liked it, and I'm glad like other people are liking it, and I like. And so like that was the only note, is that there was a certain point where I went like, all right, I got it. Like this is going on a little too long. I think there's 2 monster beats essentially that I was like, I feel like this could have been one monster beat.
One monster beat, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Act 3 kind of goes to an insane place.
I really like how it escalates faster than you think.
Yeah.
I liked that.
Even though it's a long movie because the setups and it takes its time, it wants to do all the things that horror movies have, which might be you're right. It's kind of like, that's a little bit of a feather out of their cap just because they're trying to do a lot. But yeah, it does move.
Yeah, they're trying to. It's funny. They're doing a lot. They're saying a lot, but it's all in the same area. Yeah. Where like I didn't expect. I knew this was going to be about like age dysmorphia, because like one of the things right away. First of all, there's a lot of ass in this. There's a lot of
it stars
nudity.
Margaret Qualley's ass and legs. Like
yes. Yeah. But also Demi Moore, she's very naked in this.
Yeah.
And immediately, and I think this is the point, you're like, man, she's banging. And she's in the movie like, I'm hideous. And I'm like, no, Demi Moore, you're banging.
You're Demi Moore.
But that's the point, right? Is like, she can't see herself
right
the way we're seeing her. And so like, I knew there was going to be that aspect of this, like the age dysmorphia, the mother-daughter stuff. Surprised me, and the relationship between them.
Yeah.
Did you know? I didn't really know what it was. I knew like more or less that it was going to be about. It was a Cronenberg make a younger you, but I didn't know how it was going to work, the system.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about. I knew that based off the poster, there's sutured Demi Moore's back.
Right.
Like you could tell. Okay, so she birthed something. In an unnatural way, and the title, The Substance, makes you think, okay, so there's some ooze involved, perhaps, and there's a bit of ooze,
it's oozy.
For all the expectation in the ickiness of like the actual mitosis that happens on screen. Like there's a little wormy that becomes Margaret Qualley. There's very little blood for what it is. Like basically your torso is being ripped in half, and it's actually less gory than you would expect.
The whole thing, it's a little heightened reality, all the body horror.
Almost also, under the skin. You've seen that, right? That's even more so on the spectrum where it's like, and then a balloon pops, a balloon of skin pops, and that means something,
right.
But this is definitely almost removes itself from the event, which would be, I think, in reality, like a grimy version of it. Chris Nolan's Batman's version of it would be an explosion of blood.
That was, I guess it's very Cronenbergian, but I think it is supposed to be a little more, obtainable for most audiences. Does that make sense? Where I was like, this is like very basic Cronenberg, and like I don't think that's not really the point of the movie. So it didn't, I didn't need the monster to be that monstrous. That's not really the point. What I love is that one of the sources of disgust in the movie is the male gaze. Basically, Dennis Quaid, eating shrimp. As people have already talked about. The shrimp
scene,
But also the neighbor. And I noticed what they did, which was very interesting, is that when she's her other self, the younger Margaret Qualley, these characters are portrayed less disgustingly.
They're kind, because I think the observation is that they're kinder to the younger version because they want something from her.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like there's this whole thing where it's all sort of for the male gaze, which I know isn't 100% true, but in this case, I would
say less gaze and more like straight up male behavior. Like it's going for the jugular in terms of you are coded.
Invisible. Yeah, you are invisible at a certain age. Because,
which is cool, because I think that's a nuanced kind of take, is that like males are coded to make females invisible is one way of also saying, males are shitty to females,
and you see this with most, I think actors are the most clear example, but I think this happens in every occupation, I imagine. But like where you look at an actress and it's like when she's in her 20s, she gets certain roles and then she just vanishes. And then suddenly she comes back as like a mother, like later in her career. Where like these career, like you'll see that happen a lot where an actress will just vanish for like 30s and 40s or like, and then suddenly they have a different type of role or something like that. Like it's just how, and I'm sure it's also tied into just age in general, but like, this is tackling a very common thing in a very, I think, precise way that like Death Becomes Her, for example, doesn't really tackle as much.
No. It's just shades of ambition. Youth is like a part of it, but it's not solely about youth and beauty. But like obviously it comes up when you do like body horror because you want to think about the body parts moving. Because it makes it more visceral. It makes, you start thinking about the muscles behind the skin and shit like that, which is the aim of horror. I think that's, and I think you're right about kind of doing that comparison, even though they're not perfectly one-to-one.
It's all around the same. This reminded me of Death Becomes Her because it's someone trying for eternal beauty, paying a grotesque sacrifice, right?
Yeah.
And until the opposite happens, turning themselves into a monster in the pursuit of never having to age. It's the same. It's the picture of Dorian Gray. It's you can't fight time, but I think this does a good job at pointing out that it's like, I think the saddest part of this movie, another part I didn't expect, is when it's Demi Moore trying to have a life,
right,
and she just can't do it.
I think that's probably one of the more interesting aspects, is that there is a second act, like, which is one of the reasons, because it's not the main arc. It's like that's why it feels protracted, or it feels like almost like there's polar bodies connected to each other. But like there's a whole arc that is just like, well, maybe this can work. And after the horror kind of like settles in and we are confronted with the problem that Margaret Qualley is going to, take too much, there's this kind of realization that sets in for the character Elizabeth Sparkle, the prime Demi Moore, where she's like, maybe I can deal with this. Maybe I can have my own life.
Yeah. And I think that's the conclusion a lot of, people in her place would have. I mean,
right.
a lot of people in her place never would have done this, but
but
that's why it's also about.
Well, it's also kind of about cosmetic surgery, though, right?
Yeah,
So a lot of these stars have to deal with the fact that they're like, I'm making this covenant with my body where I'm changing things by hook or by crook. It's going to change me. I just don't want the age, I don't want the wrinkles.
It's interesting because it's very specific, I think, to celebrity, but also it is, it's body dysmorphia, something that like I don't personally have a relationship to, but like,
right.
It's why they say, like, if you want to compliment somebody, compliment a decision they've made aesthetically and not something they don't have control over. Even if you're complimenting, meaning saying to someone you have a beautiful smile is complimenting something that they don't have control over. Whereas you say, I like that outfit. I like the tie you're wearing. I like the purse. Where it's like,
I like properties of you instead of I like what you do to the world.
I like the things you've decided to do as opposed to, And
100%.
so like being a celebrity, it feels like it must be so much of the negative version where people are like, oh, they're famous dimples or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
And then you get older and you're like, I need to have the dimples. God damn it. like, and then like plastic surgery.
Dimples,
and then,
stat. Yeah.
So like that's a big part of this, but like, because it's.
I also want to talk about the indifference that this movie does towards that, because that's a whole traumatic through line of thought, right? What we just kind of discussed, what you pointed out, the way in which she's dealing with it in a solitary manner.
Yeah.
When she does confront the world with that kind of, she doesn't actually cry out to anyone, say like, please help me. Or she never like explains it to anyone. There's no conversation with the outside world. So it's the world's perception. There's a disconnect. And I love the indifference. Like when she calls to buy the substance, cause she gets like a number through like when she gets in a car wreck, this like nurse who's a beautiful, android, basically is like, hey, I got some good stuff for you if you want. And it's called the substance and it's going to change your life. And when she calls to buy, the line is like, she's like, I would like to order the thing.
Right.
And he's like, sure, okay, address. And then he just hangs up. I feel like there's
no customer service whatsoever.
He's just so indifferent. I feel like there's a missed opportunity to just have sounds of like Call of Duty bleeding through the receiver. It's just like the guy I bought drugs from in college, because that's what they wanted to evoke a little bit, right?
I liked that because I did think going into this they were going to go more. And I didn't think this would have been a wise choice, but I thought they were going to go more into like who's making the substance. Let's find out. Like when I first saw the trailers,
if this is a TV show, that's all it does.
Exactly. Yes, it would be a mystery box about the substance. And I thought like Dennis Quaid was going to be involved from the trailer, and it was like, no, he's an incidental creep.
Yeah. And there's the apathetic response the company gives to Demi Moore when it all goes tits up. Which is just like, hey, something is clearly wrong here. And the voice on the phone is like, don't care, lose my number. And
right. And they keep, it's like a moral thing because they say to her, like, there has to be perfect balance. Remember, you're the same person. Remember, you're not two people, you're one. And they put the blame on her, basically, which is like when she starts saying, like, this is going wrong.
Right.
And
it's like weaponized Buddhism, you know? It's like
it really is.
It's like, here's a statement of truth. Do you agree it's true or not? Well, yeah, of course that makes a lot of sense. Of course, I can't disagree with it. Then don't ask any questions.
I think I'm sure this was written before, but maybe not. Like there's a direct relationship to like Ozempic, right?
Right.
And that idea too, which is like these pharmaceuticals and the plastic surgery that are just like, look, we're all beautiful, yada yada yada, but like here's the thing you can do, and the medical world is very impersonal, right? Is like every time I go to the doctor, I feel furious because the doctors are so impersonal about things, and
like, this is a momentous thing for me to, you know, this is my body, and it's like, lose my number.
Yeah, every ER visit, the emergency room is filled with people having the most life-changing experience and people who are at work and bored. And so it's that indifference, right? That's like I really like that in this, where it's just, there's nothing. There's no customer service. There's nothing she can do. They're basically just will say, like, do you want it to stop?
There is one instance, and this is what I love about movies. There's one instance where they give you the alternate, the hand descending into the depths to grab you while you're drowning, so to speak, which is Fred. Do you remember Fred?
Yeah, I was going to talk about Fred because this is the scene I think that is the most tense part of the whole movie for me, which is her about to go on the date with Fred, and she keeps fussing with her makeup, and you're like, you're gonna be late, just go be with Fred. For people who haven't watched, I wanted to set up Fred a little bit.
No, exactly.
Because for people who haven't watched the movie, because I imagine there's people who don't like body horror that might just not watch this movie, right?
That's true.
The idea is like, and you see this in other movies about addiction and stuff, where it's like, okay, she's taking the substance. That's strike number one. That was a bad idea that she does. She does it while drunk. She calls the number.
Right.
And it splits her into two people. And, you know, it becomes this thing where when she's young, she's having this fucking fantastic life. And then when she's her old self, she's just sitting around the house and she's just like getting more and more depressed. That's the picture of Dorian Gray of it all. And then she starts like tucking away the body. But there's this one moment where her young self takes one extra day or a few extra hours, and it makes her finger age. And so it's like a really shitty time. And she realizes, because this guy earlier that she ran into from high school named Fred, who is like her age and thinks she's the fucking best. She realizes, like, I should call Fred. I should have a life.
In her despair.
Yeah. And it's the sort of thing that in another movie would be like the resolution, you know, where it's like
the nice guy,
guy. And then she learns to have a life of her own.
Yeah.
And that's the idea, is like, she's going to, on this date with Fred, to have a life outside of her younger self.
So there is that lifeline.
But she refuses it. Basically, she keeps fussing. She keeps seeing her younger self on pictures, and it's just this that's one of those moments where I'm like, Demi Moore, you look gorgeous. Go fuck Fred. Have a life with Fred.
You know, the way he
that's what they want.
So we're talking about this indifference. We're talking about this barrier that's set up where it's like there's no actual human interaction in the world. Even between her and herself, there's no human interaction. Yeah. Fred is the one who's like, hey, I know you from the past. Like, he literally walks up to her in the way that in Groundhog Day, Ned Ryerson does to Phil. Like, to say, like, here's an authentic interaction, because it's someone from your past saying, hey, you blew up. You're great. You're still beautiful. I'm always sad we never got the Phil Ned Ryerson like hump scenes that we all wanted, because you know that he did that in Groundhog Day.
Of course.
Right? Yeah, he fucked everyone in that town.
He fucked everyone in that town.
Anyway, it's just kind of
the
like
animals. He fucked the animals.
It's the reason that it needs to be a failure after a failure, a tragic loss, and you know all that stuff for Demi Moore's character, is because she's searching for affirmation, right?
Yeah, well, it's sort of,
even with
I think
Ned Ryerson.
I think a huge component of this movie, and part of the torture of it, is that we as the audience can see that there's nothing wrong. Meaning, or rather that there's nothing wrong with her. And that's the dysmorphia aspect, where it's like, she doesn't see herself the way we see her, this beautiful actress. And the point is to show, like, it's not just the male gaze, it's also about the Hollywood machine, right? The casting directors, and like how the film industry is so aesthetic based when it comes to this shit. And so it's like you meet Fred, who's just a nice guy who is genuinely sees her as another human being that's gorgeous and like and is just like it's sort of like I don't know. I see this all the time talked about on Reddit, and I don't know if this study is true, which is the idea that there was a millionaire and a paraplegic that were surveyed and found that like when they first became a millionaire or paraplegic, they were obviously like miserable or really happy, but in the end it evened out, meaning that no matter what happens to you in your life, you usually don't go through life feeling any better or worse. You adjust.
Yeah, I was talking to Swaim about this as well. Like, if my real thoughts on this are that happiness is goalpost moving for the self, you know, and you can choose to be happy with very little. In fact, a lot of people do, because if your expectation is not alarming superstar aerobic superstar success, Elizabeth Sparkle, then you can be happy with the lot you have in life, which may be a cat and a couch.
That's how it works. Yeah, and it is true. It's completely true, because I've met or I've like I know of very, very rich people who are miserable for the similar reasons. And like I think about my world, where I think about like what I aspired to do when I was young, and I achieved some of that stuff. And was I happy? No, I wanted more. Like, you always just want more.
Because you're the main character. We're all the main characters, baby.
Yeah. And so it's that moment with her and this guy where it's like, it's just not good, and she's not good enough or something. And she ends up not going on the date. And like, again, this was the most tense part for me in this movie, was like just being like, go on the date for the love of God.
There, can we talk about a little bit how many, like, so a lot of movies, I don't need to tell anyone this, but they do metaphors, they do little snapshots of like, look at this thing, and this movie does arguably too many.
Yeah,
like
so many.
In the first like 2 minutes, there's like an egg yolk at the beginning, sets up shit that will be, like, I actually like that image as the first image, because it just shows an egg, like a needle goes into an egg yolk on a table, and then
the last
you see mitosis.
Shot, of course, is also her as a little egg, basically.
Yeah. But like the metaphor of what is the camera doing during that time? Well, it's just showing it. It's just looking right at it. So it's almost like it's not even the image of the egg splitting that's the interesting part of the metaphor. It's the fact that like we're gonna be there and see it very clinically and medicinal, and it's anyway. That's like the first metaphor. And then we get the Hollywood star. He's like where Elizabeth Sparkle's like star. It's just a shot looking down at her Hollywood star, where
as it gets created,
and we see through time, even including snow. By the way,
like in LA. I was like, well, that's a rare occasion.
Yeah, that was like a day after tomorrow, some shit. And then it ends with a dude wiping ketchup, which is red, looks like blood, with his feet on her, and then zooms in on her name, and it's just like, okay, so you're taking a bat and just hitting me with it. Got it.
Yeah.
And then like within her first conversation because the first scene is then her with Dennis Quaid, and she, at the end of the conversation, after he's being ultimately dismissive and horrible, she just stares at a fly drowning in a scotch glass.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, okay, movie, calm down.
Settle down. There's a lot of that. This is where like the Cronenbergian part was like, the world is disgusting to her almost, like, or to us, the audience. Everything was very disgusting.
Yeah, which I thought was interesting.
I mean, him eating the shrimp and that scene.
Coralie Farge's standpoint, because she wrote and directed, and I'm like, that's a tough one.
This is what I meant with the ending, where I was like, by the ending, I was like, I don't know if this needs 20. It's 2 hours and 20 minutes, and I was like, I don't know if this needed 20 minutes of that, because by the end, I was like, I got it, man. I got it. It was a lot of that, like when they do Frankenstein's monster, and I was like, I got it, guys.
Yeah, it felt Prometheus, the X-Files.
Yeah.
Modern Prometheus.
And then she splatters, and of course, she's in a little egg. She basically, for people who don't watch, she mutates to the point that she is just a puddle on the sidewalk,
just a
on
face
her own
puddle,
star.
A la Doctor Who. And it's the same observation that you don't know this reference, but people have seen Doctor Who. It's the same thing. There's a skin flap that exists in like the
Last Human.
The Last Human, yeah, okay.
That's the only Doctor Who episode I watched.
Bro, really? Well, then you nailed it for this moment. Yeah, and it's the same observation where it's like you've had so much cosmetic surgery that you've eaten away all the actual substance of your life, which obviously,
there's a point. I do think there's a lot of cosmetic surgery symbolism in this, because it feels like there's a point where she like doubles down in a way where like it's not going to get better. Where like the first thing, the activator that you take, it says only take once, and then at the end when her other self starts falling apart, she takes the activator again to just be like, come on, roll them dice, give me something pretty. And indeed, she does not get something pretty. She gets a big monster.
She dies.
The audience was going nuts. Like they play it for laughs too, when she like puts on the dress and goes and starts like
basically staples to her face a photo of herself, which is that's where I'm like, okay, like
she lost her mind is I think the implication to me is like
what they're doing,
she's just snapped. But like that's when like, because there's the part that for me made me go like, oh fuck. Because they do the thing where she takes just a little bit, an extra day of her older self. And then her older self doesn't go on that date and just devolves into, I'm just going to like eat a bunch and make a mess of the house. And then her young self wakes up and goes like, what the fuck did you do? Fuck this, never going back. And just goes into the room that they've made and just drains her older self of spinal fluid. And because you've already seen like just a little finger was she's gonna fucking turn into a monster.
Yeah, she's a Baba Yaga or whatever.
Yeah, and then of course the reveal is there's no more spinal fluid, and she calls and they go like, well, that's why you're supposed to share, like because you need time for that spinal fluid to replenish, so you're gonna have to jump back into that body.
I also once again, I love some, you can call it indifference of like in the writing, details by omission. Do you know what I mean by that? By like not saying something, not writing a line, not writing an assumption by a character. Just they do this thing almost in a knee-jerky way, reveals something about how that person perceives the world.
Yeah.
And one of the things I love about the indifference of the power dynamic between Margaret Qualley and Demi Moore is that all of this metaphysical shit that we're talking about in terms of like she's asking, who am I, what's my purpose now, all of that is Demi Moore's like cross to carry.
Right.
Margaret Qualley, because she's the powerful, quote unquote powerful one, because she's beautiful and she is the it girl of the moment and has this insulation from the world because of her superstardom, she doesn't need to think about any of these things. And that's something that I think that is essential, like that showing that indifference is essential in kind of deconstructing abusive like relationships, right?
Right.
It's like it almost always seems to be exclusively the problem of the victim to solve what's wrong. Because the other person is like, everything's right. And I love that Margaret Qualley's character doesn't even, like, I can just take time. We don't even see her internal thought process. She doesn't have a friend she discusses it with or interacts with the world. She just takes it.
You keep talking about the isolation. I didn't pick up on how isolated the main character truly is. Mm-hmm. And what I mean is like they never show her really have a friendship. Even when she's young, it's all transactional conversations. It's all people who either find her invisible or want something from her. And she's so alone in all of this and she rejects anybody reaching out.
Right.
And that's huge. Because you're right, is what a big question, obviously, in this movie is, are they different people, right? Like they keep saying, remember, you are one, you are the same person. But like when she swaps, does her brain swap? Or is it just, I mean, this is sort of I guess this also has a little severance in it. It's the same idea, right? Severance is the idea of like you're completely different people because
what if someone took over your life?
Yeah. So like you'd think they'd start very similar, but it really does feel like the moment they separate in this, the big thing this black market drug company is hiding is that no, you are in fact very, very different people.
Yeah.
They're very similar, but there's like instant resentment for each other. They don't seem to have the memories of being the other one. Like that was one thing that I was wondering about.
That's why they are not. So I think you've answered your question. It's a flawed system.
Yeah.
It's unnatural.
At one point, they both managed to exist at the same time.
Which I said for a long time. I've said twins are unnatural. We should get rid of them. No,
pick one. Pick one.
Just pick one. Sophie's choice, please.
Twins.
Everyone, twins. And do it early. Do it preferably while they're baby size.
Yeah, we've talked about this.
Yeah, but yeah, no, it really dives into that, and I respect that kind of answer because they could be like ambivalent about it, or they can be the thing where movies typically are, which is just like you answer that question yourself. No, they emphatically, this is a lying company, and they put it in the DNA of the company. Its interaction is like that Helvetica font that you see that is like tech bro disruption, font, where it's like, okay, so this is Elon Musk is running this, right? Is the vibe that they want you to get, right?
You know what I just realized?
They're answering that question is my point.
Yeah, this also has a touch of Michael Bay's The Island. I realized.
Oh yeah, dude.
A similar. I love any sci-fi because like Severance, which I have some issues with how they're telling that story, but I like any sci-fi like that where it introduces a sci-fi premise and then introduces an aspect that you're like, oh right, that would be fucked up. Like where it's like, oh, if you had a work memory and your life memory, then your work self is basically a slave to your other self.
Which is the reversal of this.
Enslaving a part of yourself, yeah.
Or that's the distinction between severance and substance, right?
Right, and this is like, oh, you have an old self and a young self, and your young self can start eating away at your old self by taking more.
Right, which typically we do this tale in reverse. Like we do the old lady stealing from youth. I mean, it's always the witch tale. It's the Sleeping Beauty idea, or maybe not Sleeping Beauty. I don't know. You know.
And
Western
she becomes nonsense. Like This was another source of comedy. Demi Moore is great in this because once she starts becoming like, she basically turns into the Six Flags mascot. Other people pointed that out.
Yeah.
I didn't invent that. And
that's great.
Once she does, she's very funny. Because like they're also showing the idea that when like this idea of like when you get older, you just don't have time for people's bullshit. Mm-hmm. So like the neighbor where she's just like, fuck off. And like just screaming like get out to people.
She becomes Frank Reynolds.
Yes. She becomes Frank Reynolds.
Trash man. Yeah.
Where it's like she doesn't give a fuck anymore about people. And it's like almost freeing. Where it's like this is called The Substance, and I think it's also about substance, like person having more substance.
Right.
Where like her character, her older self, is more relatable and more likable, I think, than her younger self. To the point that you see their shows back to back, and her exercise show, when they first show it, it's like it's a little dated, but she seems to be genuinely, it's all in performance, but she's like making an exercise video. And what I mean by that is like, she's making a video for other women to exercise to. And she's saying, keep with it, ladies. Come on. It's not perfect.
It's almost like a leader of a community.
Yes.
You know.
And then when her younger self does the show, it's clearly just for someone to jerk off to.
It's Pearl. It's look at me, look at me, look at me.
Yeah. It's just yeah. And so it loses its purpose as an exercise show, basically.
Yeah.
It
lacks
like
substance.
That.
Yeah.
It lacks substance. Yeah. Because that's what they're saying is like, yes, we all want to be younger, but we all want our old, like I like when people say, would you want to be in your 20-year-old body? I'm like, yeah. Do I get my brain now? Do I get am I broke again? You know?
Yeah.
Like, am I a broke
then I'll probably
idiot?
do the same dumb shit that I did then, or whatever. Yeah. No, it's a great question. I also think that the movie kind of answers it. I mean, you can make an argument that, again, the movie's being like indifferent so you can come to your own conclusions. I do not. I think that they're actually saying, which makes the horror a little less like on the mark a little bit. Mm-hmm. This is a bad company. The company shouldn't exist. Yes. It's not like a dilemma where the horror is coming from the psychological kind of manifestations of the reality by the character. What if a company did this terrible thing to a person?
I'm imagining like a Zuckerberg type in Congress being like, we clearly explain that they are the same person. And the congressman being like, no. Sir, an actress exploded on Hollywood Boulevard.
Yeah, exactly. It's just dead eyes. No, it's because Margaret Qualley, what you just pointed out, the movie itself shows that even in her youth, there's ineffable quality to Demi Moore, just like for all of us. There is an aspect of the creature that is, you cannot, it is utterly by design, the essence of the creature. Margaret Qualley's character has zero essence. She is a billboard, right? You
could say she's the real monster.
It's
a Frankenstein story for sure.
Monster. Yes.
But it is. It's that idea is you realize that,
but with zero sympathy.
Beats her older self to death.
Zero sympathy for her, and we get that when you look structurally at the film. I believe I think so too. I believe that the moment where she's attacking herself. So the actual dragon in the lair is her younger self. Then everything after that is kind of epilogue.
Once she starts falling apart, you don't feel bad. You're like, how do you fucking like it? That's the feeling. Is like, she's now desperate the way her older. So yeah, you're right. It is, I think, unambiguously like they are separate entities. Mm-hmm. Which is an interesting idea that they didn't need to explore, but it's a whole other thing, which is like, is it a part of her? Is this a part of, because I would also argue that Demi Moore's character at the start isn't necessarily a good or bad person. And what I mean by that is like, she's a rich celebrity. There's that element where like, she's sort of like, oh, poor me. And I'm looking at her with her housekeeper in her beautiful apartment. And I'm like, I don't feel that bad, but it's not supposed to. We're not supposed to feel that bad for her. She does a desperate thing.
I don't think that's the goal. I don't think it's to rouse sympathy for anyone in this movie. It's to show a bunch of goblins.
It's not a moral tale. But again, she's also not a bad person.
No.
It's just about a desperate person.
Yeah, it's shades. But yeah, and I like it when movies do that. I will say the one, because you said early on, you kind of are like, a knock against it. I kind of have some pedantic nonsense. Exactly on this point where I'm like, I love metaphors. Like I said, movie, you should calm down with all the metaphors. But I love that it does that. It may be doing a little bit too much. But one of my big problems is the kind of the bludgeon of. Like the metaphor, satire should be a bludgeon. It should be a fart joke, a higher level fart joke. It should be emphatically like, this is clearly what's going on.
There's a few moments that aren't that could have been more subtle.
And it's stupid to say like, well, the whole point of body horror as a genre is not subtlety. And it's like, fair enough. But at the same time, if you're trying to make a point or make the point of satire, if you're doing the Jonathan Swift nonsense where it's like, oh, I want society to be better, examine yourself, human. If you even want to get close to that kind of commitment and discussion with the audience, it's kind of tough to do this shrimp stuff over and over. The griminess.
Yeah.
I think to the point of it's illogical for her to do this stuff. I don't know.
It's tough because I do think having written scripts and gotten feedback, you realize that things that you put in your script that you think aren't subtle, people still might not pick up on, even people who are very intelligent.
The producers
and so Like, for example, there's a moment in this where, so the doctor who has a birthmark on his hand, who's young himbo, is like, check out this substance, call this number. And then later, after she's like deep into it, she sees an old man at a diner near where she picks up her substance. They never, no one ever sees anybody. The place where she picks it up is like, it's like an Amazon drop off. It's like, there's nobody there. It's this white
P.O. box. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's this old man, and he says like, have you, he says something to her, the amount of like, has he started eating you yet? And you look, and his hand has the birthmark. And I was like, got it. He's the guy. He's the old bird.
Yeah.
And then he drops the card that has the number on it, that everybody gets a card. And I was like, yeah, no, I got it. And then they show a flashback of the young guy to show and I was like, I got it, guys. I got it. Where they like, but it's that moments where they're like, does everybody, all the dummies in the back, do you get it?
Do you get it?
They're being, they want to make sure that if this movie feels like it's very, it feels like at some point they had a note from someone who said, I don't get it. And they're like, all right, let's make extra super fucking sure that everybody gets it. And
which
so it is like you said,
rough.
It's balls deep in that stuff.
Yeah, and I also think that there's a lack of logic that comes from because of those type of notes where you need a device like a character who that like the whole fact that we're doing this whole thing that involves this nurse. The fact that we're doing this arc entirely is indicative of like to make things clear. That's why they wanted to do that lore. But at the same time, why is he peddling both of them, the younger version of him and the older version? Why are they the drug dealer? And they're also like, fuck this drug.
Right. I don't know where their relationship was. And I know like there's not, again, I'm glad there's not heavy lore, but it is like, why did he have that? And like,
yeah, but it's to make things clear.
Yeah, it's just to move
other things along. Clear, move it along. Yeah.
I don't know. I sometimes this bothers me, but I think this movie had enough to say. And what I mean by like, I've talked about how I didn't like The Lobster, and the reason The Lobster, and I really like his other films, but The Lobster bothered me because I felt like it had one thing to say, and then it said it over and over and over again.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, and I got like, I feel like in the first 15 minutes of The Lobster, I was like, oh, I get it, and then the whole movie was that over and over again. I was like, I got it. This. Every time I would say like, oh, I get it, they'd add another element that made me go like, oh, that's interesting. Or like, I didn't think about that. Or that's a cool direction.
You know what's good in this genre? A movie that's good in this genre that does that well, even though it has other flaws and it's kind of low budget. But have you seen Vivarium?
No.
With the
the houses and the Jesse. It's Mark Zuckerberg. Yeah.
Eisenberg.
Yeah. I wanted to see that. I just haven't seen it.
Yeah, they do this thing where it's like, oh, when you think it's going to zig, it zags. But like ultimately it's a very simplistic movie and stuff like that. But like, yeah, bringing up all three of these movies we've mentioned in the last, 2 minutes, like honestly, like I love that these movies exist. I want more of these movies. They often have flaws like this because they're trying to be like, it's like weird, you can't blame a blunt instrument for being a blunt instrument.
Right. I wouldn't even call it in this movie a flaw necessarily. It's more of they're casting a wide net. They want to make sure
it's more operations.
Yeah. Like I like, again, I really like this movie. So it's not much. There was no point where I was like, I don't like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. There are horror movies that I was like that. Like, yeah, I think that I don't know. I was going to take us on a tangent that involved in a violent nature, but I don't need to do that with you. I
love
podcast.
That movie, Abe.
It's so dumb.
I love that movie.
That's fine.
They're making a sequel. I don't know why they're making a sequel, but I love that movie.
What? All right. Yeah, sure. Let's make a franchise. Let's do 13 of these fuckers. Fuck it.
I want to talk about Margaret Qualley only because she is down to clown. And what I mean by that is I've only seen her in one other thing, which was Drive-Away Dolls, which I know you guys didn't like. I really like Drive-Away Dolls. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was still a Coen Brothers movie.
Yeah. I think it was very much of it. There's like a silliness of it that felt like it was the 2000s, which is when it was supposed to take place. Yeah, I thought she went all in on Driveway Dolls. That character. And I know it's Coen Brothers, but then after watching this, I haven't seen Kinds of Kindness yet, but I suspect she's a maniac in that. I did see Poor Things. She's in that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all to say that like she's been around for a while, but like
she's
a bit of a force.
She's killing it right now, frankly. Like just between Driveway Dolls, which she gives I think it's a fairly mediocre movie. I'm sorry, Daddy Cohen. I'm sorry, Daddy. But
that's fine. I like it.
But she is a revelation in that film because she is doing something that's as high octane as in Hudsucker Proxy, Jennifer Jason Leigh, where she's like, I bet my Pulett's on it. It's that kind of elevated.
She's
that performance.
going for it.
She's going for it.
It's those big swings that it's like, what a fucking swing. And this movie is no different, where it's just like, she is so naked in this. And that alone, I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Like you are going for, I'm going to win an Oscar.
I think she's going to win an Oscar 100%.
In the next several years, 10 years, easy.
It's just one of those people where it reminds me of like one of the reasons Christian Bale to me was on the map is watching American Psycho, how undignified and like wild that performance is. It's moments like that where it's like, this could backfire. Like if you have to really trust the filmmaker, right? Mm-hmm. Like to know it's going to work out. And she's clearly picking the right things. Because even whether or not, like I like Driveway Dolls, but even if people don't like it, she is undeniable in that, where it's like she's given a Coen Brothers performance.
And it's like the second time she's worked with like a well-known director, because she was also in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where she was like a smaller role, still very good, but like was basically like Tarantino does, like, I'm looking at someone who's over there and I took a photograph of that person and here's that archetype, that photograph as a person in my movie. And she's great at that. She's just an object of youth in that movie. But she's increasingly killed it throughout her career.
Yeah. Equally, I'd say Demi Moore, this is a performance that I always forget, Ghost, G.I. Jane, like, her earlier, she was going for it, right? Mm-hmm. Like she was going for the Oscar. This is like, she's like way more, I'm trying to think of if there's anything else. She's way more of a comedic performance in this, and way more of a, like it's later when she starts like falling apart. Again, that's play for laughs more than I thought it was going to be.
There's this tendency, which I love this trend, because I don't think it was started by, I'd have to do my research, but it's definitely in the zeitgeist now, the Michelle Yeoh kind of stuff, like where it's like, let's take a person who is identifiable from a time, usually the 90s, because it just works out that way, in the early 2000s, that was, we all said, this is who you are, this is what you're Brendan Fraser, you're a guy who is in The Mummy, and you're George in the Jungle. Right. And now we're going to make you play real people.
It's weird because I don't think of Demi Moore as someone who like went away. But like when it occurred to me, I was like, oh yeah, I guess in the 2000s she wasn't doing as much.
In the 2010s. She
2010s,
Yeah, I don't think she was particularly in the zeitgeist even by the mid 2000s.
What it is to me is I feel like part of it's like actors aren't finding much satisfaction in mainstream blockbusters, and it's like seeing this movie that has also Dennis Quaid in it, where it's like, I think it's like these actors are finding satisfaction in like getting to be in these fucked up horror movies more, because this is so, it's just watching this movie, everybody gets to do an amazing performance, and you get to see this Demi Moore act in a way that I haven't seen her. Dennis Quaid is also like, he's grotesque.
Yeah. It's a comedic performance as well.
Yeah, and it's like they don't get to do this stuff, and it's really fun to watch.
What are you talking about?
It reminded
Frequency?
me how good they are. Frequency, yeah.
Remember Frequency?
I remember Frequency.
But yeah, you're absolutely right about that.
What it is that they came from a time, and like, when they first came up in the 90s and 80s, that was a time where even then you didn't get to do shit like this, Not really.
I mean,
some people
movies
did.
have changed.
Jeff Goldblum did, but yeah.
And also now everything's indie markets.
Yeah.
I can't help myself because I'm trying to make movies, and movies are my life. And so dissecting it, which I'm glad we do, and this should be the main part of the podcast, was essentially us talking about what the movie's about. But like, I cannot help but like point out that this is what we get now. There's blockbusters, and then there are these. And what I mean by these are, let's take an actor who is of notable. It may either be a return or maybe a transition from TV, but it's the brand. Once again, the star is the brand, but we're doing it for smaller markets. So whereas in the 90s and early 2000s and even into the 2010s, but really ultimately Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings and ad nauseum killed that. But like, the star was the brand, and then the iconography became the brand, the IP became the brand, and then the star lost its luster. The star is now returning because we have now run the mill of highly popular, Harry Potters, so to speak, Star Warses,
right,
and whatnot. So that will still exist, and that's the AAA movies. But we still have to have the AA and the single A movies. And in order to make even a AA movie now at this point, you need to have people like this incredible cast. Yeah. Because otherwise we are not going to watch it.
And that's the thing where it's like Demi Moore, again, I feel like this isn't like stunt casting. Like, again, she's not like some washed up actor. No. It's more of just that, like, people like her and Dennis Quaid and like any actor from the 90s, like, I feel like they're resolved to have to be like play like the president in a Marvel film. You know what I mean? Where it's like, that's just what they can, because we don't make movies anymore where like main characters are like older people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I do.
Where they're where it's like everybody is just ripped and young and a superhero in a blockbuster. Where you look at Jurassic Park and you look at fucking Alan Grant. He's not ripped, He's not
ripped. He's Kevin Costner. Bring me back, Kevin.
It's
Costner.
Not even that. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's not even that. I'm not even talking about old people. It's like you can't be 30 in a movie. It feels like anymore.
It does feel like, we extended
you have to be
life.
Ripped. You have to. The only way you can be in that and be older is you have to like nearly
Indiana
die
Jones.
like Hugh Jackman.
What was the last film that was it? The Crystal Skull where they showed his bareback or whatever.
No, they did it. They did it in the new one.
In the Dial of the Destiny. Dialing.
He still got it. But even then, they had to de-age him for half the movie because they were like scared. And it's like, it's that. So it's like,
imagine if Scorsese did this with The Irishman. Just made De Niro get fucking ripped.
That would be amazing. Yeah, like Cape Fear ripped.
Yeah.
It'd be amazing.
Taxi driver.
I mean, he's not ripped when he takes off his shirt, Harrison Ford, but like for a 70-year-old,
are you kidding me?
He's banging.
That's not
he's banging for a 70-year-old. Yeah.
Yeah, he's peak.
That's because he's also like,
look, I know 7-year-old men. Okay, I know, with their shirts off. I know what that is. Okay?
We all go to the club. We all go to that club.
We go to that club. Yeah, don't ask questions.
Quaid is there. Quaid.
Eating his shrimp. Just shrimp grease just all over his face and hands, in his fingernails.
But yeah, I know what you. Again, it's that idea of like there's like mainstream movies, and they are lightly exhausting, occasionally fun, and now it feels like we are getting a resurgence where like I think legacy sequels are giving us a little of that, like the new Beetlejuice. Yeah. But generally speaking, it's like, anybody who doesn't fit into that very ultra specific quality that like Marvel movies now have created have to do other films, and those films are fucking nuts. And I kind of love that.
I kind of love that in 10 years, we're going to look back at the Marvel time and like all the idiosyncrasies of what makes the things, what made us love those things, like the snarkiness of Tony Stark and stuff. We're going to look back at it and be in the same way that we look at G.I. Jane or the General's Daughter or an Alex Cross or something like that.
Oh, I'm sure.
Where we're like, oh, sweet summer child, you know, like you thought you knew what movies. I think it's the job of every generation to
yes,
rebel for no reason other than to rebel.
100%. I think the only unique thing is that, like everything right now, there's no middle class. So like, it's that where it's like, you either have to do these dirt cheap indie weird fucking movies, or you have to be Robert Downey Jr. making $100 million.
It's almost like you remove the centrism when things get polarized.
Yeah,
it's almost like
look at Willem Dafoe. I love what Willem Dafoe's got going on.
Oh, dude.
There are these actors who are like, listen, I'll go quickly do a Spider-Man. That'll pay for my mortgage. And then I'm going to go be in every fucking Robert Edgers film playing a weird little freak.
I'm already in all of the Wes Andersons anyway, you know?
Best of both worlds. A lot of them have that.
Yeah, I mean, he's insanely good, but it also helps that he looks like a straight up interesting goblin human being.
Yeah, he looks like a murderer.
Yeah, and it's like I know that we started this podcast talking about how you shouldn't give a compliment based off things you can't alter, but that is show business, baby.
I was gonna say that's show business. That's the whole fucking thing, you know. And that's what this is about. Like,
right?
Because I think that like this is about uniquely, I think, age dysmorphia and body dysmorphia, something that transcends your occupation. But I think like there's no mistake that it's about an actress who's making exercise videos where it's like, you're in a career that's very, very, very honed in on what you look like, and it sucks.
When the reality is, and what the movie's saying, and what I'm saying, is that we all just need to hump Ned Ryerson.
Yeah.
Just go to town.
Ned. Now that's a beautiful man.
Fucking Ned.
Yeah. Who played Fred? Do you think that's a Ned? Do you think that was for because it's
Do you
Fred
think it was for
Ned?
Groundhog Day? Perhaps. He functions in the same way. But it also could just be one of those blue collar names, you know? I don't know, like a Fred, a Ned, a Ted, one could say.
Yeah. Yeah. One could say that. I looked him up.
Mm-hmm.
Edward Hamilton Clark is his name. Fred.
See, he's even a Fred. He's an Ed inside of Fred.
You're right. Like an Ed, like a nesting doll.
Mm-hmm. Which is what acting is.
Yeah. It's perfect symbolism.
And it's also what this movie is, because she snaps open like a
nesting doll.
What are we doing?
Well, inside all of us, there's a little Margaret Qualley.
That's what I want.
What if that's the reveal is like other people taking the substance? It's still Margaret Qualley.
So most people know this because our Venn diagram of audience between our podcasts are very, very close and overlapping. But that would be a great bit on a show that we have called Escape from the Multiverse, where one of the three of us, the three hosts, is an asshole every time. Yes. And by asshole, I mean they're actively trying to sabotage the podcast with a bit, and that would just be an excellent bit.
What, that they're Margaret Qualley?
There's just like the movie, the take from watching this movie is that there's a little younger version of us inside of us.
That we're bring it all always
and
back
you
to
can't
Russian
let them out.
nesting
That's
dolls.
the point of the movie. Don't let them out.
It's like the Star Trek. Remember the nesting doll in that he gets from his professor?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's like that.
Everything goes back to Star Trek.
The chase.
Yeah, and then they learn that we are all the same.
Yep. And that's ultimately what this is about. Inside all of us, there's Margaret Qualley.
There's a little...
And inside of her, there's a monster.
And then as we all turn into skin flaps and die.
We're all a puddle in the end.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there is something in that, right? Where it's like, this is about the quest for beauty, and it's like, we're all dust. That's the thing. It's like, you can't fight it. We're all dust.
Right. Well, I mean, I think that seems to be the ad hoc position of a lot of horror movies right now, because I believe that trends declare moods just as much as moods declare trends in society, like pop culture and such. And like, there's a reason in the 60s musicals were big, and there's a reason in the 70s that there were horror movie, like slasher films were big. And it has to do with like youth rebellion, and it has to do
and there's a reason superhero movies are big.
A time of great peace and optimism. And I think right now, when you look socially what's going on, there's a great mass of pessimism, to say the least, right? And I think our horror movies are reflections often of that. What do we find horrifying? Well, the obvious thing, just like vampires and zombies were indicative of their times, trying to make a statement. Right now, we make movies that have an indifferent world that does not give a fuck about you. And it often is like on you to be better than the world.
It usually, like, I think we're only going to start seeing like pandemic stuff because it does have a delay. Like, I don't know. I've talked about this before, where 9/11 happened, and then America is like, everything is fine. We're fine. We're just going to make a bunch of movies about how people are invincible and everything's okay and no one could die.
Yeah, exactly.
And they save the day all the time.
All the time.
It's like, I don't think we're fine.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a reason fantasy did really well after 9/11.
Exactly. So like, I don't know. Yeah, you're right about that. And I think I'm right that we're all dust.
Yeah, no, that's where the comic came from.
Bones and dust. Delicious dust.
Now I just want to play D&D with you.
I know.
I'm very
Anything
excited.
else to say about The Substance? I mean, I did really like this movie. Like, I would say, I don't know. Who cares what I think is like always my resting position? But personally, I really like this movie. I really like it.
Yeah, I think it's an imperfect movie. I think it's a very fun. It's a good movie all around, which you don't get a lot of.
And what I mean by that is like, Hannah hates body horror.
Yeah.
So this was one where I was like, you want to see this? And it's like, absolutely not. No fucking way. So like basically body horror, if you don't like it, you're not going to like this movie. Period.
If you like The Fly, if you're down to clown with The Fly, that is above and beyond what this movie shows you. It's actually kind of clinical in its show. It's not as gooey as you would think.
And it's part of why I love this movie and love everybody in it. And it made me respect them because they're making a movie that they know this is not for everyone. This is going to repulse most people. Like, this is a movie that, statistically speaking, won't make money because it will repel most people. And they're like, we're going to fucking do it. Demi Moore's putting on like an Austin Powers ass suit in this and walking around and being like a monster. And it's like, this is fucking awesome. I love this.
Yeah. I enjoy. I was up for the ride for sure. And on top of everything you just said, we should support movies like this because like they won't be here if we don't. Right. We need to.
Oh no, indie films in general for sure. I mean, I don't know. This movie seems to be drawing a crowd. I didn't check to see how it's doing, but like I saw it on one of the least, like I saw it on Halloween, and that tends to be one of the lowest days for box office, and it was tons of people in it, and the audience was going nuts. They were loving it.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing we live in LA, and at certain times of day, it doesn't matter if something's small. There's just too many people.
There's always an audience. Yes.
People are just wandering into rooms, it seems.
It's like a casino. There's always something going on.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I have been in theaters in LA where it's definitely I was the only one, but that's usually at the end of the run, and I'm going at like, at a obscene time. But if you go at a normal time, it's like, get these people away from me.
Yeah. I just read a note about the making of this, and I just want to say Ray Liotta was originally cast in this as the Dennis Quaid, but he had to die.
Yeah, I see it.
And so, I was like, oh, fuck, I see that. That fucking sneering laugh.
Well, yeah,
like,
you're thinking of Goodfellas right now.
Goodfellas, yeah, exactly. Goodfellas, Ray Liotta.
Going for it. And he went for it for a lot of his career, too, which is great.
Yeah, shout out to Dennis Quaid in this, who, I mean, listen, he just played Reagan, so...
Yeah,
I don't think I get along with the guy.
So with politics, all that stuff.
The first shot of him is the least dignified shot Like it's one of where it's a fisheye lens of him taking a piss, and it's just right in his face, and you can hear his like weak piss,
like,
and he's just like sneering into the camera.
He's literally a cartoon that is just a mouth, you know?
Yeah,
like he's just a mouth. And I think in the poster he's smoking a cigarette and has like cigarette stains. Like very well deployed and a great performance. Even though I thought I wish the movie on a whole had more nuance. Again, you don't blame a hammer for being a hammer, but that's just how to make the film even more nuanced and better. Like, I think that the movie could have ended. This is me making a movie now, like, so take it for what it's worth. Yeah. But like, I could have seen an ending where they did the ending that they did, and then they did like over credits or just a small even epilogue to the epilogue, where it was just the TMZ photos of actually what happened, and like the griminess of the paparazzi, like taking photos of, oh no, she just walked out into the street and people were horrified and like she got shot and stuff. Like, like it was all magical realism.
I think you're right. The movie is sort of over at that point, and it feels like the tone change. Like when they did the Frankenstein thing, I was like, is this real? Is this really happening now?
Right. Yeah. And they went for it, and it's because I think they doubled down on kind of this is not real kind of aspect, which isn't super clear. Usually movies that we're familiar with where they do that game, there's something in act one that tells you this is all kind of like an elevated interpretation of the events or something like that. It feels like from the jump, you're like, no, this is actually really happening. She has that bathroom and that's how much blood came out and all that stuff is true. And then at a certain point, the walls break down and people are like doing this kind of almost like in Labyrinth when David Bowie is like, come Jennifer Connelly to this dance of bubbles that I've made for you. And it's like it becomes unhinged.
It does.
Yeah.
Very fun.
I don't have anything else to say about this movie other than go see it. It's fun.
Definitely
if you
go
have
see
the
it
stomach
or
for it.
Stream it now. It's available on Stream.
That's where I watched it. On
yeah,
Mubi.
It's a Mubi. Mubi is becoming a big player now. Mubi.
Yeah, they just, I don't know when they started it, but they have a distribution company more. Like they're either buffing it or it just got formed. I don't know the specifics about it, but like they have, because they've always had like Mubi Go, but like now they're actually distributing films, like being a part of the process of making films, which I think I hope people support it more because then you'll get more movies like this.
Yeah. I like these little freak indie studios when they first start. Like I remember Focus being that at one point. I remember Miramax being that little freak, the little freaks. And then A24 is like, we're the little freaks now. We're going to freak you out. And now Mubi is like, no, we're the fucking freaks. Come over here. And I love the battle of the freak studios. Yeah. There's always one. There's always one little freak that shows up and they're like, we're going to make weird movies. And it's like, yes, fuck yes. You're my new favorite.
Yeah, exactly. That's what our networks are. Like when you go to the party.
We're the freaks.
We're the freaks at the party that are trying to gang up with the other freaks.
We're the A24 podcasts.
Yeah. Thanks for that. I'm going to go to sleep now.
Yeah. All right. We can end this.
All right.
Hey, thanks for being on.
Thanks for having a conversation with me, Dave.
Thanks for having a conversation with me. Do you want to plug some more stuff right here at the end?
Patreon.com/smallbeans.
Small beans. It's a reference to balls. I say it a lot. It's a reference to testicles, right? 2 small testicles.
When you're an artist, you like not to take what other people say about your art as truth. So I'll have no comment on it. But I love that you found an answer for yourself.
Oh, okay. Well, everybody check that out. I listen to you all the time, every day. I love it. And I'll tell people, patreon.com/gamefully unemployed, GAMEFULLY, unemployed. We watch movies every Friday night with our patrons. Sometimes Abe's there. Often. It's a bunch of buddies hanging out. You also watch movies Monday. I need to jump in on one of those soon.
Oh, we're having loads of fun. In fact, we watched Pearl the other.
Fuck! That's great.
Yeah, so it's like
they watch better movies.
We watch Yes, and then we shit on them. Like, not like we talk about how poor they are. We shit on them as in we let a good movie play. Like, we once watched High and Low, and then me and Swaim just had a conversation about whatever the fuck we wanted to talk about, which is, I hate it. It gives me great anxiety, but apparently it's fun.
I understand. I have similar things where, we're like, is this anything? I guess people are enjoying it, so we'll keep going.
Yeah, exactly.
Until we turn to dust.
Until we snap into dust.
Hey, listen, our music is produced by Chris Corlew. You can find him on twitter.com as The Corlew, or go to shipwreckedsailor.bandcamp.com. Our channel artwork is produced by Michael Vincent Bramley. For more of his work, go to mvbramley.art. Our episode artwork is by Justin Brown, available on Twitter as Justin T. Brown or at artnessbyjustinbrown.com. And finally, additional artwork is by Starlene Hodge. You can find her work at starlenearts.com or on Twitter as StarleneX. Cool. Goodbye.